Once upon a time, I was a liberal. I am now walking away.
Good evening, Patriots. We are back. Walk away with Brandon Straka. I have missed you all so much, but we're back. And we decided, since we've already kept you waiting about 3 weeks, we decided to keep you waiting 3 weeks and 15 minutes. So we apologize for the delay. But listen, a lot of things have changed. So we're experimenting with a new night. We're experimenting with a new time. We're experimenting with a bit of a new format on the show. My screens are moving around everywhere like crazy right now. I can't even actually see the show, but that's okay. So we're scrambling everything up and we're trying new things, and that's what life is all about, especially life after the midterms, which we're going to talk about later in the show. And I'm super excited because tonight we're doing a panel show, and it's going to be amazing. I have some of my all-time favorite walk-away family all-stars that are going to be joining us in the panel tonight. But before that happens, I want to tell you guys a few things. First, I want to talk about, I haven't seen any of you on this show since the Walkaway March on Washington. And the Walkaway March was actually an incredible experience. It was October 26th, 27th, and 28th. And on the 26th, we did our gala dinner at Trump International. It was fantastic. It was literally, it could not have gone better. We had more than 500 people at dinner. It was just like the energy was electric. It was absolutely incredible. It was just, it couldn't have gone better. It was absolutely amazing. And then the next day, the weather totally turned on us, but we had the Walkway March and rally. So we started with a pre-rally at John Marshall Park, and then with the Walkway March, and we led, which culminated in a main rally, which was at Freedom Plaza. And the sun did end up coming out. We had a great crowd anyway. There's been, if you're listening to the media, you would believe that there were 10 people there. The DC police say that there were about 5,500 people there. I'm somewhere right in the middle. I'm going to say I believe we had about 3,500 people at the Walkway March on Washington. It was absolutely amazing though. And all of that footage can be found on YouTube, by the way. If you go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com, well, some of you are already on it, youtube.com/US minority. After you watch this show, click on the footage of the Walkaway March on Washington. And we actually have, I want to show just like a little snippet of my speech from the Walkaway March on Washington, just so you can get kind of like the feel of what the energy was like and what the atmosphere was like. And it was really, really amazing. James, do we have that clip of my speech from the Walkaway March on Washington?
They have called us Russian propaganda, Russian bots, paid actors, fake testimonials from fake people. Well, I say fake news. As story after story from the left came out invalidating your voices, your stories, and your existence, I became very angry. Not for myself or the campaign that I had begun, but for the thousands and thousands of people who had bravely stood up, many of you speaking out for the first time in your lives, only to have the leftist media try to slap you down once again. The same media that loves to talk about you, but would never dream of talking to you. They have attacked you, lied about you, and they have tried to silence you. And they thought it would work because they've gotten away with it so many times before. But it didn't work this time, did it? Because the silent majority has become unsilent. And we will never be silent again. And who exactly is this unsilent majority that the liberal media and the Democratic Party are so out of touch with? Well, I will tell you exactly who we are. We are African Americans. We are Hispanic Americans. We are Asian Americans. We are Caucasian Americans. We are straight, gay, lesbian, and transgender Americans. Are you noticing a pattern yet? Because you should. We are Americans. And no matter how hard the left tries to make it so, our differences will not divide us. We will all stand united, shoulder to shoulder as Americans, because we walked away alone, but now we march together.
This is so bad. Yes, it was absolutely amazing. And so if you want to see any more from the Walkway March on Washington, you can go to my YouTube channel and you can see it there. Some clips are actually on the Walkway Campaign YouTube channel as well. So we actually have a couple of the people from the Walkway March on Washington on our panel tonight, which is going to be really, really awesome. I'll introduce you in just a second. So last night, I want to tell you a cute story because I absolutely love these people. So I met a couple of Walkaways, people in the Walkway family. Their names are Joe and Lynn, and they live here in New York City with me. They live in Brooklyn. And so some like shiesty person created this like Walkaway gathering in New York City, and they sold tickets to it on Eventbrite. Sorry, it's actually not funny, but they sold tickets to it on Eventbrite. People bought tickets, people showed up. I knew nothing about it. And this person said, oh, you're going to meet Brandon Straka, and it's going to be this thing. And so I got an email. I was sitting at home like in my pajamas, and I got an email that just said, where are you? We're waiting for you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And this woman named Lynn, she was like, we're at the party. We're waiting for you. What's going on? We even got you a cake. And she sent me this picture of this cake with my face on it. I think some of you already have heard the story before. I was horrified because I started putting the pieces together. I said, listen, call me on the phone. Call me, which I don't normally just like ask a stranger to call me. But she did. She called me. She was the nicest person. And then we started to put the pieces together that something had gone wrong. And so I felt really bad. So I said, why don't you guys come over to my house? I want you to be able to meet me. Oh, now I can see the show. Now I can't. I want you to be able to meet me. And so they came over, we hung out, they gave me the cake. They were like the nicest people in the world. And so since then we've kept in touch on text message. And last night they took me out to dinner, and I was in kind of a lousy mood anyway for a number of reasons, and which I'm not going to get into, but they took me out to dinner and they got me another cake. And can we see the pictures of the cake? First, just show the picture of the cake, please, if you can, James. Okay, so that's so sweet. It's me at the Walkway Gala dinner wearing my Trump top hat, and says, congratulations, Brandon. They were congratulating me for the Walkway March weekend events, which went so well. And then the next picture is Joe and Lynn. Can we see that? That's Joe and Lynn from Brooklyn. They are the nicest people. I just love them. I'm sure they're probably watching right now. Joe and Lynn, thank you for dinner last night. You guys are so sweet. I look forward to keeping in touch with them. And I got to see lots of pictures of their dogs and hear all about their dogs. And so I think at some point I'll be making a trek out to Brooklyn and playing with their very, very sweet and cute dogs. But anyway, I wanted to say thank you to Joe and Lynn. Had a lovely night at dinner last night. And thank you for the second Trump cake. And which is, by the way, don't get me any more cakes. Please, Joe and Lynn, don't give me any more cakes. And anyone else, don't send me candy. Don't send me cakes. I'm trying to lose weight. I gained 500 pounds getting ready for the Walkway March on Washington. All I did was sit in front of my computer, binge eating. I think I just saw Maria nodding her head. I was sitting in front of my computer, binge eating and stress eating, totally horrified, trying to figure out if this event was going to come off, and it did. And now I'm trying to take off the weight, but I ended up eating half of the cake they got me last night over my sink with a fork. Just like any man in their 40s should do. Patreon. So ladies and gentlemen, before I bring my guests on, I just wanted to say, we're going into a new year. We have a lot of great, amazing, fresh ideas that we have for the Walkway campaign. And I want to continue to be able to, broadcast this show for you guys and take trips and do public speaking and do all these things for the Walkway campaign. And so I'm asking people if they're able to contribute to my Patreon account. James, do we have a graphic for that? Or do we have a link to the Patreon? He'll put it up later. He doesn't have it at the moment, but James will be putting up the link to Patreon. I think it's patreon.com/US minority. That's what I think it is. But when you get a chance, look that up. If you're able to support on Patreon, that would be amazing. And now, without further ado, I would like to bring on the panel. I'll introduce them one by one. The first is a young lady that I found on Twitter. She is absolutely incredible, brilliant young woman, 18 years old, young conservative. I think she is a total star. I've said this time and time again, and I think that she is a brilliant voice for young people, giving them a fresh conservative perspective that young people never get. And she's very opinionated. She has lots of ideas, and she's going to tell us everything that she thinks about how we should be targeting America's youth. And we're going to be talking about the midterm elections. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Magdalene Rose. And James, you got to keep me informed as to what's happening on the screen. And my other member of the panel tonight is going to be another walk away member of the family. That's Zach Hing. Zach is also young and brilliant and amazing, and he kind of just blew up out of the gate creating this amazing walk away video that's gotten tons of hits. He now has about twice as many YouTube subscribers as I do, which I'm incredibly bitter about, because I kind of feel like I sort of created, the walkaway. I birthed the walkaway movement that's made him a bigger star than me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Zach King.
Thanks for having me, Brandon, as always. I know you mean that intentionally and unintentionally, so always appreciated.
Of course. And the Shamika Michelle, I absolutely love. This girl is hilarious. She's also a member of the Walkway family, found her on Twitter. Nothing but sass and brilliance and intelligence and beauty, and she always tells it like it is, and sometimes she's a little bit crass too, which I love. So Shamika Michelle, welcome to the panel. Is she with us? Is James with us? I'm flying without a producer. And Maria Albanese. Okay. And Maria Albanese, our media mogul who tells us the news that the news isn't telling us. She's joining us with the panel tonight. Maria Albanese, welcome to the show.
Good evening, everybody.
We have full panel on screen. Shamika, you need to unmute. All right, so I'm going to start with Maria tonight. Maria, I know that you were having a good amount of angst and agita leading up to the midterm elections. I think that in some of our private conversations, you were telling me about some dire, drastic actions you may be taking if things didn't go a certain way.
It didn't get any better with the midterm or what followed the midterm. But okay. I have regained my footing.
You have.
And I am, well, yes, I'm optimistic. Bill Mitchell had a great tweet tonight where after what happened in Florida, Bill Nelson conceded, and Bill Mitchell said, "There you go, you dirty cheats. You have the car, but we have the keys."
Wow.
So, that was brilliant.
That is brilliant.
So I'm feeling a lot better. We saved Florida, and that was my main stress out because I'm in Florida. Not that I'm very upset about a lot of the races across the nation, but Florida was shocking. And we talked about this. I'm still a firm believer that there's a red wave buried under the blue fraud. So hopefully we will get to the bottom of it, because this in history we've never seen before. Races that are this close. We've never seen anything like it. And then the other thing we talked about was the irony of the presidents who have done the best in the midterms, which would be Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, are the two non-establishment men. So I think they both, Ronald Reagan was on the right course and Donald Trump is definitely on the right course. So after all the fraud, I think we could see our way clear of getting things done in the Senate, and we'll just see where it goes. I'm feeling better that we saved Florida, so today was a good day for me.
Is the election, are the midterms actually over? Do you think?
No, that's the point. I don't think they are, because they're still counting things across the nation. I keep hearing things that who was up is down and down is up. So, and really, Brandon, I really can't wait till it's totally over to where the real numbers come in of who showed up to vote, because a lot of the talking heads keep laying it at the feet of the deplorables that they didn't show up. I don't believe that for a moment. But they never address the organizations that are behind the left that fund them You'll never hear them talk about it because it's my belief if we didn't have all these groups like Soros and Steyer out there organizing these people, they wouldn't get out of bed in the morning to go vote. They wouldn't get out of bed to go protest. But you'll never hear that on the news. What you'll hear is the deplorables didn't show up. Now, in some states, how did you have a deplorable vote for a red governor and a blue senator? None of this makes sense.
Magdalene, I see you shaking your head there. What do you have to say?
Well, I actually got reached out to on Twitter by a young Republican who ran for Congress in California, and he was telling me what really went on with the California GOP, and he was saying, first of all, that no money was really given to the GOP candidates in California, and that when he went to complain about this, he was sort of told, well, we're sort of counting California out anyway. So when you talk about what happened in Orange County and all the problems that have happened there and losing that many seats, I think we lost like 8 seats, that whole thing has been turned blue. I think a lot of the fault is not with, individual candidates, but with the fact that there was no organization effort by the California GOP. And every candidate who asked for help was sort of treated either like being too MAGA, too extreme, or sort of seeing it as a pipe dream.
I think that's true too, because a friend of mine actually ran for state senate here in New York City, and he was telling me a lot of similar things where a lot of these candidates, Republican candidates in blue states, are just treated like a throwaway election. It's not even, they get no funding, they get no support, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, and I was told that the RNC wouldn't even, and this was from another young Republican who was volunteering with the California GOP, they were trying to get just the RNC and the RNC chairman to tweet out about these races. And they said, well, we don't want to divert attention away from these other states. So how can we expect California or Oregon or Kansas even to turn red or continue to be red when the GOP is sort of like actively working against it through their naivete and their lack of action?
Right. Shamika, I wanted to ask you, they're finding, I think they're still finding ballots in boxes and trunks of cars. I think they found some in Al Capone's vaults. What do you think, Shamika, about all of these new votes that they're finding after the election? What's going on in Broward County? Do you have any opinion about that?
Well, as far as the votes, I mean, I don't know. Maybe Stacey was hiding them up under her, we're in Georgia. Maybe she was hiding them under her clothes or something, giving her a little extra padding. I'm not really sure. But I think that, of course, it's a hoax. How convenient that, they lost all of these votes.
Well, it keeps happening, too, just in that same, those same counties. This keeps happening again and again. And listen, I'm not trying to judge a book by its cover, but I mean, that woman, what is her name, Maria? What is her name?
Oh, Snipes. Brenda Snipes.
I mean, she looks like Cruella de Vil ran into Beetlejuice.
The older lady, yeah.
A complete villain. If she's like a Disney villain.
Right.
Zach, what do you think?
About Florida or about Brenda Snipes?
Let's start with Brenda Snipes, and then we'll move on to Florida.
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't really think that it was really that bad, that there was somebody like Brenda Snipes who had been meddling with votes for so many years. And the fact that it actually goes unpunished is a lot of the problem. I think that oftentimes when we talk about voter fraud and the fact that, you can actually turn up at a voting booth and not even have to really show any form of real legitimate identification is a big deal. Now, of course, that obviously isn't something that Democrats will push forward. That's not something that the left will push forward. It's because they're the same people who want open borders and say anybody can vote and all of that, which is obviously what hurts. So, I mean, I think that the fact that we are recounting, I think that they're two separate problems. I think voter fraud is the one thing with Brenda Snipes. And I think the second problem is also, I think, the lack of a standardization process across all states as far as how we go about counting votes. Something that occurs or is occurring in Florida is also happening in Arizona or had been happening. And that was with the Senate race between McSally and Sinema. And it looked like McSally had not a significant lead. I don't really think that senators will win by landslides anymore, but a 20,000 vote lead, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, let's recount them or keep counting them, and now it looks like Sinema is the one who's in the lead, and she actually conceded. So we do have a Democrat senator now in Arizona for the first time in 30 years. So I think that there's two problems here. I think it's the voter fraud thing, and Brenda Snipes is the embodiment of that. And there's also just outdated methods of how we go about conducting ballot counts.
Right. Now, you said that you think that there will never be, what did you say, another landslide in a senatorial race?
I feel like, again, I've only really witnessed with my own eyes maybe 2 or 3 election cycles ever. But I think that after seeing what happened in 2016 and looking at this most recent election, even with races with Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, even though it was very clear who would be the victor, all of a sudden I think that this mindset of, there's no chance that this candidate could win or this candidate could take this position. That's the same kind of thinking that got our president elected, but it came primarily from the left. And I think that that's important to note, because I still think that amongst young people, I'll be honest with all of you, I went out and asked like 5 people, did you vote? And a lot of them said no. That to me was disappointing, because I think people are still reserved to the idea that, my vote doesn't count or my vote doesn't matter. And I think that that's very, very evident. Races are extremely close nowadays. I think that there's a lot of so-called independents in this country. Really, that is the biggest demographic of people. It's not the people who are actually declared Republican or Democrat, but independents that could go either way. And I think when we get the word out there and we speak to people about these ideas, it's important not only to emphasize the importance of voting, but to talk about those values. And to go back to your original point about it not being won by landslides, I think has to do with a lot of the fact that ideas are very diverse now, and you're going to find pockets of conservatives and progressives living within the same zip codes of one another, which is why we're seeing it throughout this country. Right. States that are traditionally red are only really winning by 5 or 10,000 votes, about the size of a county, and it's really, really evident. We now have a lot of data that supports that.
That was kind of going to be my point, I think, a little bit, is that, everyone kept talking about a blue wave on the left, and on the right, they were talking about a red wave or a red tsunami. And I, if you'll recall, I never said either way, because I think that we're simply too divided. We're too split. I think we're not going to see landslides like that anymore, I don't think, for the time being, because this country is very split. Hey, Shamika, I want to ask you, because the results were what they were, which I would describe as sort of ambiguous in terms of who won, do you have an opinion? Like, do you feel like Republicans won the midterm, or do you think that Democrats won the midterm, or neither?
I guess neither of us can really say that we won. I am glad that if we had to give up one, that it was the House and not the Senate. And I also want to say, as far as what he was just saying, it's a lot of older voters that don't vote either, and I do think, especially in the Black community, it is a common misconception that our votes do not count. So there are a lot of Black people that don't even waste their time going out to vote. And also, I would say that a lot of Black leaders, are now, those who have walked away, we're not necessarily saying you have to be Republican. Right. We are saying maybe choose to be independent, so that you can require whoever you're voting for to, prove what they're going to do for us as a community.
Hey, Magdalene, I want to throw the same question to you. Do you think, do you have an opinion? Did anyone win this midterms?
Yeah, I think MAGA people won this midterm, because if you look at all the candidates on the Senate side, I don't know the specific House races, although I will say this. The House Freedom Caucus, which is the bane of Mitch McConnell's existence, lost only 3 seats, one of which they lost because they didn't have their incumbent that they preferred. The other one was scandaled, and the other one was ousted by a very conservative Democrat. The MAGA movement, those candidates did very well. Josh Hawley, who I think is going to be a big star, Mike Braun, the person who what's his name, Cranmer and Marsha Blackburn are all serious MAGA people. Even if you look at someone like Mitt Romney, he of course led the Never Trumper, but he aligned himself with Trump. So you saw candidates who did not embrace this, who did not embrace the actual grassroots of the conservative movement fail. I never liked Martha McSally for this. I didn't think she could bring it home. I think when you have candidates in the Republican Party run as these like middle people who are very establishment and well behaved, they will lose now. So I think MAGA people won. Democrats won the House, although I think the California thing, there's a lot of voter fraud. And I think the Conservative Party should understand that the people they tried to keep down in 2012 by not going with like a Newt Gingrich or Herman Cain candidate who eventually elected Trump are in charge of the party now. And you're seeing a lot of people have problems with that, not even just Never Trumpers, but traditional Republicans.
Maria, I think that Magdalene made a really good point there. And I was just having a conversation earlier today talking about kind of the difference between MAGA people. Being a Republican does not mean that you're a MAGA person. Would you agree?
I agree 100%, and I do believe this is a major problem within the RNC and the GOP. When people say to you, Brandon, how has the party embraced you? This is not about the party. The people embraced you.
That's right.
We come from all different walks of life. We are MAGA people. We are deplorable people. We are what voted Donald Trump in. The RNC and the GOP cannot fundraise off of us. They have our vote based off of our moral fiber and what we're voting for and what we consider patriotism and saving our country. We need to restore the law and order. As Magdalene said, this was what the midterms was for us, was to get more of these MAGA candidates in. That's our way of draining the swamp from the bottom. While the president's draining it from the top, we're using our vote to get more MAGA people into the seats. And this is going to take a few years. You figure if we would have we did good, but if we would have done even better with the House, let's say, and we've got more of the MAGA candidates in, by 2020, we would be looking good. And then 22 would be better. It is our goal to clean out the rhinos. That's what we are aiming for, the voters. That's why it's real important to me to finally see what the real nationwide numbers were, minus the fraud, because that's where we're at now. We don't have any real true numbers. They're all over the map. But any way to gauge it, because I cannot imagine someone that voted for Donald Trump in 2016 that did not show up to vote in this election. And then when we put it together with the walkaway movement and other movements out there and all of the other people that we now have voting for a Trump ticket, and I know he wasn't on the ticket, but that was the mindset of the MAGA base, that we needed to vote a straight up or down red ticket as if Donald Trump was on the ballot. This was the mindset of MAGA people. And so I really do feel they got out and voted. And thank God we do have the Senate. But we need to like purge the voter rolls. I don't know if you're aware that in 2013, the Department of Homeland Security implemented the Real ID Act. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. It gave states a few years to comply with a Real ID, which means you had to jump through hoops with all your government documentation in order to have a driver's license that was in compliance with Real ID. I would really think it would be a great idea if they purged voter rolls nationwide and everyone has to re-register with their Real ID. If we have to do it to drive, we should have to do it to vote, because
absolutely
there is nothing more important than voting, because these are the people that are in charge of our lives, in charge of our health care, in charge of our safety. This is more important than driving. So if we have to have this ID to drive, we should need it to vote, and everyone must re-register. I'm all for purging the entire nation, because we need to restore the law and order. They're getting away with murder with this voter fraud. They've been doing it for years, and right now, it's really out in the open. In your face.
Shamika, you made a comment a moment ago saying that you feel like a lot of people in the Black community say that they feel like their vote doesn't count. Why is that?
Of course, a lot of that would be said to go to white supremacy, or they just feel like the government is going to do whatever the government is going to do, regardless of who they vote for. So a lot of Black people, from what I've learned just talking to people, feel like it's a waste of time. And so I think that's something that we have to work on, getting people to understand that voting is important. You know, we can say all day long, which we have, that our ancestors fought for the right to vote. They don't care. They believe that, you know, their vote doesn't matter, and that whatever is going to happen is going to happen.
It's so funny, though, because as Zach just said a little bit ago, I mean, I don't know exactly what the statistics are in the African American community specifically, but in the voting population in general, it's less than 50%. And if 100% of a whole community came out to vote, that would totally sway the direction of you know, unfortunately, still a lot of racial minority communities are straight down the line voting Democrat, you know, as we know it. And in this election, that didn't budge all that much, I don't think. Zach,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel at this point, do you feel like, you know, these movements like Walk Away, where we're trying to really sort of wake people up, but specifically, I think, wake up minority groups that have been targeted by the Democratic Party. Do you feel like this movement or movements like this have yet made a dent, or do you feel like we'll see more of that if we continue the work in the next 2 years? Do you feel like we made a dent in this election?
I think amongst young people, and as far as spreading the word, yes, I think that that's undeniable. I think that the awareness has gone up. But like I've mentioned to you implicitly, and I guess I've spoken on it on various instances, you know, it's not enough to have that in place. And I've been somewhat outspoken about this. It's not helpful when people say, I'm here to help the Black community, I'm here to help the Asian community, the Hispanic community. You know, I won't name any names and I won't point to anything explicitly, but that's not helpful. You know, it's not really going to be inclusive at the end of the day and inform people of what our common goals are. At the end of the day, everybody's different. You know, the problems that we face as Americans, whether it's healthcare or taxes, are going to be universal for Americans. Now, granted, people may be at a different economic standing than others, but I think we would all agree that there are certain things, certain American values that we'd like to be voting for, and saying that we need to cater to the Black community, we need to cater to the Asian community, is a great place to start, but that is not going to be the way we have to keep playing the game. I think identity politics is doing more harm than it is good. At the same time, though, I think encouraging inclusion and having people within the community talk about their issues, talk about the different problems that they're facing is important. But another thing I want to evaluate on was what we were talking about, like, are we making a dent? Are young people getting out and doing it? The fact that the millennial generation is the biggest voting generation in the United States, and it's probably, as far as what I've seen with the figures, the least participatory of any generation, is a problem. Like, that right there is a problem. I moved to this state only a couple weeks ago. I asked like 5 people, did you vote? And people were around my age. I think only about 2 out of 5 people who were eligible voters, eligible American, could vote, you're over 18, did not vote. And I think one thing that I must express that I hear more so, because we have to recount people's individual stories as well, is people are just apathetic. People are sick of politics. We're plugged in because it's impacted us and we've decided to walk away, become more outspoken about it. But to the average American, they don't want to hear it. Not only that, you factor into the account that everything that they see, as far as education is concerned, entertainment, is all about Trump slamming. It's all about teaching, you know, certain people that Republicans are bad and everything. I don't blame people for having cognitive dissonance, for not wanting to take action. It's so saturated, it's so tribal, and people have checked out. The problem here isn't like, okay, well, Republicans aren't doing the job the best they can, or Democrats aren't. I think there's a lack of accountability, and people are just tired. People are apathetic, and I asked an individual, like, why didn't you vote? And they were just like, well, I just don't really care that much. Well, my friends don't really, you know, it's so much.
Talking to, I literally don't know anybody these days who isn't like, I'm going to get out and resist.
I have no friends in the state. I just moved here from California, right? So you have, like I said, it's 5 strangers. But at the same time, there's some validity to that. And you're right. I mean, there's that, but then there's also the misinformed voter as well. Like, there's no denying it. There's a lot of misinformed voters out there. And like I said, like, take out bipartisanship. What are your values here? Do you want to keep your country safe? Okay, you should know where that stands on a voting ballot. Do you want to keep taxes low? There's information on that ballot. Don't just vote and follow Republican talking heads here. Like, really think for yourself. That's why I think movements like Walkaway have become impactful, because it encourages inclusion without being explicit about it. I'm not here because I'm black or Asian or gay. I'm here because I believe in something that's bigger than me. I believe in American values. So if people voted their values, like really voted their values, not just endorsed a particular candidate because Taylor Swift said so, then we'd have a very different outcome.
Right. Magdalene, I know that I saw a video you made on Twitter recently. And listen, Magdalene makes these amazing videos on Twitter, and they're very quick, but she's very bright, she's very articulate, and she's very opinionated. She gets right to the meat of what's going on. So I saw you make a video on Twitter recently. It said, the conservatives lost the youth vote. And tell us about that. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's two-parted. We are seriously up against a wall of indoctrination in schools and a wall of pop culture indoctrination. And pop culture does matter. People want to be involved in what's going on, what's current. So we have to deal with that. But we have a real problem within the conservative community. Conservatives have a great argument for minority communities, why they should at least become independents or talk about economics. But right now, we have so much viciousness in the world of outreach for minority groups, for people who are disenfranchised, that we can no longer cut through. I mean, you cannot consistently lead with, like, Democrats started all these bad organizations. They did. But for a lot of people in minority communities, and I know this, I have a lot of friends who tell me this, they can't hear that all of the people they've always looked up to are evil. So I think in order to get minority people who are young to vote, or at least become independents, maybe vote for a whole set of bipartisan candidates, we have to stop in the conservative community saying, all of these Democrats are evil throughout all of history. It doesn't work. It makes people think that they've been sucked into something, and it sort of implies that if you believed, that Lyndon Johnson was good, that you're stupid. I've seen young people tell me this on Twitter. This has to stop. It's destroying our ability to do outreach with the young minority community. And also, we get 25% or so of the Hispanic vote in presidential elections. We're not concentrating on that. We're just not. I got messages from young conservatives who are Hispanic in Arizona who said there was no mass text messaging, there were no rallies, there was nothing. We don't concentrate on that. Instead, we're stuck in this strange identity politics stream, and it's killing us. And right. Republicans have to decide that they're going to either go in and say, we want to look at this curriculum, we want to see what's really being taught, or they have to decide to create their own schools, which is a viable option. But the unionization and the federalization of education is killing us. My generation should not be given this country responsibly. We will not be able to handle it. It will be a disaster. So older conservatives and people like that, millennials, have to start to back us up, the people who are speaking out against it, and create viable alternatives in education, or break into the education that's already there and talk to unions and curriculum makers and call them on their crap.
I want to throw a question to both Maria and Shamika. I'm kind of curious to because I want to get two different perspectives on this, or maybe you have the same perspective. I don't know, but I want to just hear from both of you. I was having a conversation earlier today about the potential of, it was the same conversation I was having about the difference between MAGA and Republicans, because they're not always the same. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But do you think it's possible the next 2 years to rebrand MAGA in such a way that it actually becomes more appealing to people on the left, so that MAGA itself becomes more about growing the center rather than a specific Republican movement? I mean, the problem I think that we'd face more than anything is the left extreme hatred of the president. Do you think there's any way to rebrand the MAGA movement in a way that suggests to people this is about empowering you as an individual and about your own embracing a movement that appeals to your own best interests, and leave the president out of it if if you hate the president on a personal level. Can MAGA exist without Trump in a way that's appealing to people on the left? Maria?
I think success will rebrand it. And his presidency was doing very good until we hit this roadblock, because the next movement of MAGA was going to be Keep America Great. And I think the more that moderate Democrats see the country moving in a right direction, they have been moving away. And I think you saw that with Walkaway. You had people running from the fringe left, but you also were picking up a lot of the moderate Democrats that didn't like Donald Trump, did not vote for Donald Trump, but then started to see that he was making a difference in the unemployment, GDP, and so on and so on. So I do think we can. The goal is to have the candidates that put America first. This is the bottom line. If we could get those Democrats, all different minorities, what Zach was saying, we need all that to go away. It's America first, citizen first. Make America Great Again starts to go away. Keep America Great moving forward. And like I said, I really think that this is the problem that the traditional GOP RNC, they don't know how to embrace, because we are all different.
Right.
It's not your traditional RNC and GOP anymore. It is the independents. I've seen the center growing for quite a while, and I think it's going to continue to grow. And what we need, Brandon, we really need the indictments. We need to see the law and order restored, because I think once the moderate Democrats do see that, they will move away from their party. Because, as we know, Russiagate, fake news, all of the stuff that's been on the table for 2 years, once you remove that and show it for what it is, that's what I'm hoping, that the indictments and law and order, declassification, the more you start to show the left what their party is, the more we could bring them over to the center, even if they have to be an independent. We need to get them over the line.
Okay, I want to hear from Shamika, and I wrote down indictments because I want to come back to that. That was a good point. I want to dig into that a little bit. Shamika, can MAGA be rebranded in such a way that people on the left who are unwilling to budge on their hatred for the president can still recognize that this is a movement and a way of being for our country that is beneficial to their own lives?
I agree with Maria. I think that it can, as long as, we are being successful as a country. I think that would do a big job as far as getting people to think differently. I think that the thing is going to be getting that knowledge out there, though, because as long as the mainstream media spins it the way they want to, I think that's a problem. So I think as long as we get the message out there to people, like, hey, the country's doing better, employment is up, getting the real truth out there is going to be what it takes. And also, who's getting that out there? It is important, and I'm speaking for the Black community. It is important that we have people talking to us that we feel like we can trust. So, we're very funny sometimes. We don't want, certain people saying certain things to us, so it's going to be getting that knowledge out there, and it's going to take people that the community trusts. It's not going to be one voice for the Black community. It's going to have to be several people out here getting the message to people in their own way, because people like to hear from who they like to hear from. And so, like, I love Candace Owens. Some people are not going to receive her because they're going to feel like she's uppity, or, it's just going to take a variety of people getting the message out there, what's real and what's true, and not what the mainstream media is trying to show everyone.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. And I think Magdalene kind of touched on a point a second ago, too, about I'm paraphrasing here, but sort of like an extreme nature in the way that sometimes the message is delivered to, and which kind of ties in a little bit to what you were saying, because I was speaking recently to two different Black conservatives who said to me, and I've talked to many other Black conservatives who use the phrase Democratic plantation, but I spoke to two Black conservatives this week who said people have got to stop saying Democratic plantation because it is not going to appeal to Black people on the left. Like, it's an automatic turnoff. Sorry, I don't mean to like throw the Black question to you, but I want to ask you, Shamika, what do you think about that?
You know, it's not a turnoff to me, but I can see what, you know, how some people would feel that way. And that's why, again, I think it's important that it's several voices out here speaking, right, and not just one, you know, that's saying, hey, I'm speaking for everyone. Because honestly, and you've already introduced me as being a little crass, you know, if I don't want a cracker speaking for me, I certainly don't want a graham cracker speaking for me. So, you know, it's going to take a lot of people, you know, on the ground and hands in, you know, to get the message out here. And so that's what I love about the MAGA family, is that I do feel like it's inclusive and that its arms are open, you know, and it's not stiff and stuffy. I've met a lot of nice, down to earth people, and I'm like, wow, I thought I didn't really like, you know, the others. But
well, I have to
that's not true.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Shamika, at the Walkaway March Gala, I wish, thank God Joy Vila was there, and she had a cameraman who was taking documentary footage, thank God, because we had made this policy that we weren't going to let any cameras in because we wanted to have this very like intimate, private experience. And then when I walked in there and I felt the energy and the electricity and the love in the room, I was like, why are we not filming every second of this? So we do have that footage from her, but it was like, I swear to God, I mean, we had every race of person. We had gay, straight, transgender. We had bikers for Trump and like women in ball gowns with fur coats and stuff. And everybody was having the time of their lives. Like Zach and Magdalene, you were there. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a blast.
it was amazing. And yeah, and it's true. I feel like this is what the MAGA movement is about. I feel like this is what people are not getting. And this is why I think it's disappointing that there's so much antipathy towards the president, because if people could move past that, I think that what they would see is that the MAGA movement is really much more inclusive and diverse and sort of what do I want to say? I mean, it's really about everybody and it's for everybody. It's liberal. I mean, I'm sorry to use the term, but I mean, it's more liberal than liberalism. You know, I mean, it really is about inclusivity and freedom. And, you know, Maria was talking a minute ago about the indictments. And Zach, I want to ask you, so what do you feel like in the next coming years? I'm not asking you to like play psychic medium, but in the next couple of years, what do you think we might see that might start waking people up on the left? So people who are just really diehard loyalists and they believe, oh, Mueller's got something. We're really going to find something. Oh, Trump's going to get buried. Wait for do you think that's going to happen, Zach?
It might happen, but I think that it's going to manifest itself in a way that we don't really expect. I think that people do learn hard lessons. I don't know whether if taxes get to them or they realize they're not actually getting that student loan debt forgiveness. Eventually people get fed up and will decide to really understand why it is they continue to support a party that doesn't support them. But I think that I really think it's just the moment of current politicians. I did watch Dinesh's other documentaries. It's weird because like I was exposed to Dinesh through recent months with Death of a Nation and everything, and I went back and watched his other work. I watched Hillary's America or Stealing America. I ended up reading some of his stuff, and you know, I really think that right now there is a very strong democratic legacy that plays to all forms of progressivism that we know. When you think of someone like Hillary Clinton and you think about what she represents as far as what she's come out and said about empowering women, being for LGBT rights, she is the embodiment of a perfect Democrat. So when she says, I'm going to run in 2020, I don't think people like us should laugh it off. I think you should take that extremely seriously. Like, it's not one of those things that you just go, oh, not a chance. I mean, that kind of arrogance is what led to how Trump got elected, and it can very, very possibly happen. That White House could go to another Clinton. And they're the same people through their organization embezzling money and all of that. They have the most support of any person in history when it comes to Democrats. Anybody. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, more money than you could imagine, not just domestically, but from foreign sources as well.
Zach, I'm telling you, thank you. I want to say thank you for saying that, because I've been saying this to so many people since that story came out that Hillary might win in 2020, and everyone's going, "Oh, I hope she does. I hope she does." I was
no.
I would be so smug. Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of got this like horrible. I refuse to use the word premonition, but I was like, I think she might run.
She could take the presidency if she wanted to.
She could win. Yeah. Especially with as much anger and hatred as there is for the president right now. A lot of people would just come out and vote, I think, just to be like, not only to stick it to him, but to be like, she deserved it in the first place, not even knowing what she's really all about or what she stands for. Magdalene, what do you think?
I think that indictments are not going to wake anybody up. I think that, I mean, maybe a few never Trumpers, maybe they'll be like, okay, he was right about that justice-wise. I think the only way, because the GOP right now is hemorrhaging suburban white women, people in the suburbs. I think the only way to wake these people up is to run a serious campaign from the RNC that shows the craziness of the left. We tried to do this with Jobs, Not Mobs. It was somewhat helpful in Missouri. But if we need to run a national campaign with this, showing severe violence from Antifa, what's going on in Portland. There was a video in Portland recently of Antifa people just kicking people who were leaving. We have to show this as a serious threat to the national security of the country. That will get suburban white women, just people in the suburbs, to realize that the Republican Party is not even the party of low taxes or anything. It's the party of national security. And when you look at the results of midterms over the last 100 years or so, every time there was a major threat to national security or a major problem that was going on that would affect us, the current president got lots of support in the Senate. With the exception of Ronald Reagan, his stayed the same in the Senate his first term. The only exception with that, with all the ISIS stuff that was happening, was Obama's, because the American people never trusted it. We see a trend in the American psyche right now. They view something as a national security threat. So they sent Trump back up, and they sent him back up in the primaries as well. They didn't pick rhino candidates. We need to harness this collective feeling that the American psyche is having, which is always indicated by the Senate. And we need to run a fear campaign to show America, really show them what the underbelly of the left is. We saw it with Kavanaugh, but we didn't push it far enough. If we can run this fear campaign and then couple that with accomplishment after accomplishment from Trump, maybe just running commercials about trade deals, we can win back suburban white women. We can win back the suburbs. But it will require us to almost break away completely from the establishment of the Republican Party, because they're part of the problem.
Now, what would a fear campaign look like? What does that mean exactly?
It means web ads that show, very short web ads that show something causing Antifa to riot and then them rioting. You have to equate cause and effect with these things. I also think we should start to launch something with the RNC where you have young people making like 220 max videos about why they're afraid of the left in their classrooms, why they're afraid of what's going on in schools. You have to show mothers what their children are really experiencing. You have to show them what they're being taught. There's a video going around on Twitter of a professor talking about white supremacy and everything. You have to show them that the American Federation of Teachers and these things is not helping their children. And you have to show them that even if they're liberals, that young conservative students are being terrorized. I have a friend that goes to UMass Amherst. He's walking past communist banners and spray paint that says "We're coming to get you." He was told that if he made an effort to mobilize the young Republicans to vote, that he would not be allowed off campus. This has to stop. We can win this, but we've got to stop with like taxes and things. It's got to be a fear campaign coupled with success from Republicans, and we have to utilize Republican women like Nikki Haley and expose the First Lady more to suburban women across this country. They don't feel like they know her.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think any of us feel like we know her at all. She's been very, very, very quiet, which allows the press to kind of say whatever they want to about her, which of course is nothing positive. Maria, what do you think about that? What do you think about what Magdalene said?
I think she's hitting it on all cylinders. We also need to start renaming things. We've been referring to the education system as public schooling for decades. We need to call it what it is. It's government indoctrination centers. And when you start telling mothers,
I think that would
you need to drip that at mothers and make them think, well, what exactly does that mean? And then you have to look at the textbooks and see who the publishers are and see what their agenda is. The only way to wake up a mom is to wake them up with truth. So I think we do need to start there. It all starts with the moms.
I think there's going to have to be a step between public school and government indoctrination center.
Yeah.
I think.
No.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Expose.
I agree.
Yep.
I just think the name is going to be a tough sell. Shamika, do you have children?
I do. I have 3.
How old are they?
She knows.
13, 15, and 22.
You have, oh my goodness.
You have a
don't look old
22-year-old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
You don't look old enough to have a 22-year-old.
I was like, wow, you don't look a day over 25. And I
Yeah.
didn't say that.
Yeah, agreed.
I was like, you have children? Like, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Shamika, do you mind sharing where they fall on the political spectrum? Or are they political? Or can you answer that?
Well, my 22-year-old is not at all. I think the one that I'm going to be relying on is probably the 13-year-old. She's the one that's the most interested. But I think the more I start to learn and I'm able to, share things with them, they seem to really be more interested than before.
Do they make comments about the president?
So when Trump initially won, they were really sad. And I'm like, why, what's wrong? And so they were feeling like the friends they had at school were going to be deported. And so I think now that time has passed and they realize, okay, those were lies, they're a little bit more comfortable now. And so now they actually, one of them were watching the hearings, when Kavanaugh was going through, like she sat here and watched it with me because she was interested now. And I think, when you allow someone to think craziness, they're going to be afraid of Trump. But like Magdalene was saying, it's going to take us, really voting on values and not really going with the whole emotion of it. Because if you focus on emotion, you may not like the president. He speaks his mind, and people are wanting him to be someone that he's not. But if you focus on the values and the facts, then where's the argument? There's no argument with facts.
Right.
I mean, for logical people.
Magdalene, do you like the president?
I do. I like him. I think he went through like a growth period in his presidency. I think he genuinely thought that the left would be nicer to him. I think he thought he'd get in there and, Chuck Schumer, he's known 100 years, and Nancy Pelosi, and he thought he could make deals. I think he has really grown up. I think after midterms, we saw what I think the future of him is. He's much more upfront. He's even a little hostile towards people he thinks is hurting the country. I think this revoking of Jim Acosta's press badge, because I don't for a minute believe that came from anyone but him, was really him like tipping his toe in how far can I go with this to get the fake news to stop. And I think you're going to see him become a much more foreign policy driven president right now than you are going to see domestically, because he has really good deputies right now. I think he's about to really crack down on a lot of the NGO funding that's going on. And I think you're going to start to see him pick new allies, more like Poland and Austria than so much France and Great Britain.
Zach, do you like the president?
I do like the president, but I will say this. I don't always agree with everything that he says. I said this openly when someone from Columbia University approached me in D.C., and knowing Columbia, I sometimes have a hunch as to what their agenda is. But I will say this. I think I respect him mostly because at the end of the day, he's a man. And I mean that in every sense of the word. The guy is a man.
Sexist.
No, I mean, I'm serious. There's just a lack of it in today's day and age. And, I'll stand behind that 100%. But what's funny? I had a conversation with my dad like a week ago. And my dad lived in New York City. He was actually a commodities trader on Wall Street all through the 80s, through the Reagan years. And the funny thing he said to me, because I was talking to him about politics, about walkaway and everything, and he said, oh, there's nothing wrong with the president. I don't get what the big deal is. He's just a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Like, he just said that, like, he's just a New Yorker. That's how New Yorkers talk. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And it just, the takeaway from that is because there's something rather humanizing about it. There's something about getting things done, the sense of urgency. Hey, it may not be what you want to hear, but is he out attacking people? Is he out actually being a blatant racist? No, that's just a lot of the words that get misinterpreted. And to go back to the whole MAGA thing you talked about, whether I like the president or not, I think that slogan is absolutely great. I think that in itself was one of the few instances as far as what he's been pushing, and that it's something that's bigger than him. You know, I said it in my walkaway speech as well, when it's all about patriotism. You know, when it's beyond that, there's no real room for prejudice because your country is bigger than you. And it's not about him. I don't think that for a second he's ever really believed that it's all about him. It's always been the we. It's always been make America great again. And America first sounds like blasphemy in today's day and age, but it is going to be the one of the few things as far as domestic policy goes that ensures that American lives are safe and that there are jobs and that the economy is stable. But at the same time, it's not politically correct. And I think that that's why I respect and like the president, because it's not what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear.
Well, and I think that there's this huge misconception that America first means America only, and it does not.
Exactly.
That is not what it means. It means we have to take care of our own before we can take care of other people. And that's just, I mean, they'll even tell you that on an airplane, right, Shamika?
I was just going to say, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to feed my children before I worry about someone else being hungry. You know,
that's
and
right.
So I think that's what people have to understand when we say America first. I'm not saying I would, want another child to go hungry, but what would I look like giving a hot dog to another child and my child is sitting there starving? So right. I think people have to look at it, just in very plain layman terms. That's what we're saying when we say America first. Take care of America before you are trying to take care of everybody else.
That's right. That's right. Maria, I was having it wasn't a conversation. I went on Twitter and because our president tweeted something out about Adam Schiff, but he called him something different.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, I retweeted and I said, if liberals could just let go, they would. This is like the greatest time of our lives, and we're never going to get this time back. I mean, it's like, it's like when your kids are in high school, like one day they're going to graduate, and you're never going to get that time back. It's like, God, can't they just enjoy that this man is the president? I mean, this aren't we having fun? Are we having fun yet? Maria?
Everybody just did great answers where it comes down to we are the common sense party. It's not really difficult to figure out why we voted for Donald Trump. If you ask me, Maria, do you like Donald Trump? You know what my answer is going to be. But besides the fact that I do adore him, he's not Hillary Clinton. I didn't have to go very far to love the man, but he is performing. He is performing and he's doing great. There's sometimes he does things that I have to, catch my breath and try to figure out why he's saying it. But 90% of the times he's trolling. This is what he does. He's a master at what he does. And I just love when people tell me the president is stupid. And then I ask them where their plane is with their name on it. I would love to be as stupid as this man.
Right. Right.
But it's something we live with. But I do think a lot more people are waking up, and I just feel that the better we do and succeed, that maybe by 2020 we will pull more of those people over from the left into the center, and 2020 can look very, very good. And coupled with a lot of Magdalene's ideas, I think we can really have a great 2020.
All right. Hey, I'm going to throw kind of a curveball at everybody because this is fairly new. And to be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to do a lot of research on it. Does anyone here feel well-versed on this new prison reform bill? Anyone?
I don't feel well-versed on it. I actually did try to skim through and read a little bit because I was really trying to see why the Black House Democrats voted against it,
Right.
And so that's what I'm really trying to research as to what reasons they have that they voted against it.
Well, I'll give you a few hints. But yeah, and it's, because I'm I want to kind of dig in and really educate myself on it because I'm even seeing, of course, I don't think the media is picking up on it too much at all. And Saturday Night Live was trying to crack a few jokes about it that literally didn't even make sense. I was like, I don't even understand what the joke is here, but they were just trying to turn it into a negative somehow. But yeah, so I guess I'm gonna have to dig in and see. I was hoping someone could illuminate a little bit on that, but maybe
what is the proposed result of it? I skimmed it as well, like many others, but I didn't know what the objective here is. What's the objective, and what was the? I guess what is it trying to accomplish? I'm very, very, again, light when it comes to prison reform.
I believe the whole purpose is that so when people come out of prison, they can be productive citizens, and they have to find a way to get that done. And the president has been very much wanting to work on that. We don't want to have the repeat offenders. If they come out of prison and you can't give them an education and you can't give them a job, they're going to wind up back in prison. So that's the main meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah, I think he set up programs to help, acclimate them back into society. Because it is true, when you come out of prison and you are a convicted felon, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to get somewhere to live.
Oh, absolutely.
They just throw you back into society and you can't function. So again, that's one of the reasons why I was a little confused as to why they voted against it.
I'm with you on that one. That didn't make any sense to me either.
So they voted against it, as in they want people to end up back in prison.
It didn't make any sense.
Okay, yeah.
Well, but the thing is, Zach, I feel like, and again, I need to educate myself a bit more on it, but I think that it's geared toward, a lot of disproportionate sentencing of African Americans. And so in order to support this, it goes against the racist narrative that they are holding so tightly onto.
Sure.
Because I mean, is any part of this prison reforming sentencing restructuring? Because this has been a big problem too, where people were getting like lifelong sentences for
3 strikes you're out type.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I do believe that's also included, Brandon, but you didn't tell us we had to study for this test tonight.
Well, I just wanted to see how you guys do when you're ad-libbing.
Yeah, I did see something in there, though, about how people were disproportionately sentenced, where, someone would get, 25 years, where someone of a different race may come in and get a slap on the wrist. I did read that, something like that in the bill, but I just started really reading on it earlier today, just trying to, again, figure out why they were so against it.
I'm reading some of the comments here, and people are saying, yes, exactly, and Trump is not a very good racist.
That's right.
I like that one. Well, guys, I think I think we should start wrapping things up, but I want to just give everyone a closing thought. If you want to throw something out going into 2020, let's see, what should we make our closing thought? Magdalene, let's start with you. I want to ask you, going into 2020, what is one thing, not the only thing, but one thing in your opinion that we really need to put our energy and our efforts into to make sure that we get a result that we're looking for in 2020?
We have to develop a sellable youth platform. We have to recognize that the generation that is much more conservative, much more able to understand conservative principles is not millennials, it's Generation Z. So if we can sell them a series of ideas that not only the president endorses, but are endorsed by people on a whole wide spectrum politically, we will be able to get them motivated to vote, because they're not so much voting for Trump, they're voting for ideology, which is very appealing to anyone who's young.
Damn, I love it. Maria, same question.
Magdalene's right. Generation Z is going to be spectacular. They're going to be the new conservatives moving forward. We still need to keep doing the grassroots activism. We still need to keep going around the mainstream media. We need to use platforms like this to share ideas and grow more of the base. And I think we've been doing really, really well with it, and we just need to continue it.
Right. Shamika, how are we going to open more people's eyes between now and 2020? What do we got to do?
I agree. Platforms like this are going to be very instrumental. We have to start, really being more vocal. Myself, I will continue to, do the work, speak up as much as I can, because I think it's going to be really important that people get to hear the truth. And, I think that in itself will go a long way.
Agreed. Zach King,
Yeah.
Will you dance?
What's that?
No, that wasn't your question.
Oh,
Your question was going to be, will you dance for everybody?
right now?
This is like, people don't know this. Zach King is the cutest little dancer. I found that out at the Walkaway Gala dinner. Someday, if you ever get the opportunity, you've got to see Zach King dance. It's the cutest thing you've ever seen.
I've been immortalized in Joy Vila's live stream.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad.
Oh, no.
All right. Same question, Zach. What do we got to do going into 2020?
I think to just compliment what everybody else has said, all of that is really important. But I think the big thing has to be diversity of thought and inclusion of people, because I think right now identity politics online is what we love. And I don't blame people. You're taught from birth to gravitate towards people of a particular race or demographic because that's how you are going to be accepted. When in reality, people who are different from you may actually welcome you with open arms. Walkaway is a perfect embodiment of that. But I think to go beyond that, open source, a lack of thought policing online, which means less censorship, so ideas like this can be accessible to all people. I think that that's a big thing. And also the individual at the end of the day. Like, as walkawayers, walkwiths people, I mean, you are going to be the living example for why it is you vote your values. And there's only so much virtue signaling that can happen at the end of the day and no action. You know, it's like, if you really believe in a lot of these things, actually act out your values, you know, go and help your neighbor. And I really, really believe that 100%. There is no stronger test of faith, or really a better living testimony, than the individual in itself. Not a video, not a written piece, but what you do for your neighbor. And then they'll ask you, like, why it is do you act this way, and why do you believe in what you believe in? You know, and that is, I think that's the strongest way to people, is that personal aspect as well. So
I love that. And it's like a nice sentiment going into the holidays too. Doing for your neighbor. I like that. You know, Zach, you touched on something. I'm going to do an episode, I think, next week about identity politics, because obviously we're kind of out of time tonight, but I've been having so many disagreements in the last few weeks with everybody has their own definition of what identity politics actually means. Next week, we're going to talk about that. We're going to get to the bottom of what actually is identity politics, because I've got a very strong definition of it for myself, my own opinion. That's what we're going to talk about next week. Before we go, Maria, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience tonight?
Well, I'd like to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. I'm getting ready to go to Bedford Falls. Anyone who is a Wonderful Life fan knows the holidays is coming up. I'm going to retreat. I'm going to do Thanksgiving, Christmas, then regroup after the holidays. Meanwhile, I'm still working on helping Thomas Paine of True Pundit promote his book, which is FPI Pajamas. Go to fpipajamas.com, and I'll be helping some friends get their show, their TV station, deplorabletv.com up and running for a January launch.
Okay, you missed the cue, Maria. This was my way of asking you, would you like to say goodbye to the audience, because this is your farewell episode.
This will be my farewell episode on camera, but Brandon knows I am here in the background. I will always be texting, tweeting, and sending him articles and news that I want Brandon to talk about.
That's right.
I'm busy working on some other projects.
Yeah, and she may even be calling in sometimes into the show. Listen, I'll twist her arm.
My head on fire, that I'm angry, that somebody didn't get indicted.
Right.
You never know.
She'll be back. But the regular weekly segment with our media mogul, Maria Albanese, is going to be on pause, at least for the time being. We'll see Maria from time to time. But as a regular weekly segment, this will be her last regular weekly segment. And so with that, I want to thank everyone on my panel for coming tonight. Shamika Michelle, thank you so much for coming. Magdalene Rose, Zach King, Maria Albanese. All of these people's Twitter handles are right there in their little box. So follow all of these people on Twitter. And I just want to say goodnight to all of you. Thank you for being a part of the show. And to my audience at home, I want to say thank you for hanging in there. We're finally back. It's our first week with a new producer, so we had a few adjustments to make, but it's going to be slicker than ever going forward. So I want to let you all know that I'm walking away, and I encourage all of you to do the same. Walk away. Have a great night, everybody.